Hi, everyone. Welcome to our online services. My name is Andrew, and I am so glad you're joining with us. And I want to start with a verse I've been thinking a lot about lately. It's part of our Bible reading challenge from this past week. It's from the book of James, chapter 1, verse 27, which says, "Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world." Now, I know many of us are watching daily the unfolding events in Ukraine. Currently, over 7 million people have been displaced. Over 4 million of those are children. Now, when you stop and think about that number, 4 million children have had to leave their home. That number is staggering. Each of these families are struggling to figure out a safe place to sleep. Each of them are trying to figure out where their next meal is coming from. As a dad myself, I cannot fathom this. Now, here at The Crossing, we, like many of you, have been trying to strategically determine what organizations are making the biggest impact. What organizations are working inside of Ukraine today to provide medical care, food, and shelters. And one of the best organizations we found is Convoy of Hope. This is an organization we've partnered with in the past. They have field hospitals set up right now in Ukraine, and they are doing some incredible work. Now, as a leadership team, we've been praying, and we believe firmly that now is our time to act. As you know, during the first couple of weeks, there was a surge of people giving financially, but as the crisis continues, the needs are outpacing the resources available. And as the crisis has worsened over the last couple of weeks, I felt personally our church needs to do something now. So, as a church, we took a faith step this week. We have given a gift of $10,000 to help families who are in a life and death suffering situation right now, because religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this, to look after orphans and widows. Now, we could have waited and we could have come to you and collected all the money, but just as we sat on this, we felt like our church can't wait any longer. So, while this is something we haven't budgeted, we believe that if we led the way and took the first step, that maybe, just maybe, God would put it on some of your hearts today to go above and beyond with what you currently give, or to maybe give for the very first time. So, I want to ask you that while you're watching the service, to prayerfully consider giving a first or going above and beyond what you currently give. Again, I believe God will provide because we have a good and gracious God. So, I'd love to just ask those of you who regularly give to The Crossing to consider to go above and beyond, or maybe you haven't taken that step and you're going to do it today. You see, every dollar matters. In fact, a gift of $25 provides a family with help with the new baby, things that they need like diapers and wipes, shampoo, and other essentials. A gift of $50 provides a family with clean water. And a gift of $500 provides a family with food for a month. I'll tell you, my wife and I, we've already prayed through this, and we've decided to go above and beyond, and my hope, my prayer is that you will as well. So today, if you want to be part of this, there's no pressure, but if you'd like to be part of this, you can go to thecrossing.com/give, and you can give today, and you can be part of what God is doing in and through this place. Now today, you are about to hear a fantastic message from our founding pastor, Tim Celek. Enjoy.
Hey, welcome, Crossing Church, and I know some of you are kind of joining in online, and I'm glad you're here. I don't know. I was like at the Crossing campus this past weekend, 2115 Newport Boulevard, Costa Mesa, California, and get this, 33 people went public with their profession of commitment to Jesus by getting baptized. Woo! Man, is that awesome, right? 33 people God is doing something here at the Crossing Church. I'm so proud of the church that I get to attend and be a part of. And if maybe you kind of only watched us digitally and you happen to be in the area or live in Orange County, California, come and join us on a Sunday. We got 2 services, okay? And I'll tell you, the leadership at the church is just stellar. I mean, just out of this world. Andrew Brownback is the lead pastor. You'd love to meet him, love to hear from him, and the staff at the church rocks it. So it was great to see what God did this past weekend on the Crossing campus. Now, okay, for this weekend, I got a question for you. How many of you have ever had a job that you could not stand? I mean, how many of you had one of those jobs when you went home, like it was the kind of job you just didn't want to talk about, like with your roommate or your spouse or a sibling? How many of you have had that job where you truly hated to go do it, or it was like a really difficult job? Maybe it was a job that was just disgusting. I mean, you were in college, and you had to take that job. Did any of you ever have a job like that? Maybe you've seen this show, okay? The show actually began a brand new season in the beginning of this year, 2022, on the Discovery Channel. How many of you have seen this guy? This guy, Mike Rowe. The show's called what? You know it, Dirty Jobs. The guy shows up to people who have the most miserable of all jobs, or the most disgusting of all jobs, or the most dangerous of all jobs. The dude has been a dung farmer, a roadkill cleaner, an alligator egg collector. He's been a cow inseminator, a sewer cleaner. You name it, this guy has done it. And many of us, we've seen it, right? He's been in the dirtiest, nastiest, skankiest of places that you can imagine. Jobs that everyday, ordinary people like us, you and me, often must participate in, like on a daily basis. In fact, how many of you have ever heard of Dr. Pol, P-O-L? He's a veterinarian. And what is that guy doing in that picture? He's got his elbow up into the butt of a cow, and he's checking to see if the cow is pregnant. You knew that, right? I mean, how many of you would like to have that job? How many of you would like for me to take the picture off the screen right now, right? I think you get what I'm saying. Dirty jobs, nasty jobs, hard jobs. When I was in high school one summer, I had a job where I had to clean the pits of those self-cleaning car washes. You know, some of those car washes where the kind you drive into them and you take the wand out of its holder and you spray down your car yourself. The guy I worked for had another kind where you drove your car onto a track and the track pulled you through the car wash. Well, my job was to climb into the sewage pits late at night and clean them out so the water could flow more freely. And I'm telling you, it stunk down there. Almost every time I would just gag, feel like I was going to puke, vomit. It just had that smell. You talk about jobs. I actually know of an individual that literally his job is to clean up crime scenes. He cleans up homicide scenes. Can you imagine doing that job? I mean, what does a good day on the job look like at that job? I mean, to me, that's sick. Nobody would want that job except that guy. Now, the reason I'm telling you all this, can you imagine that your job is a Roman centurion soldier? Now, let me just say this right now. Some of you guys, as soon as I say Roman centurion soldier, you're thinking, I know Mike Rowe, but I don't know Roman centurion soldier. Well, I'm going to help you understand a little bit about it. And this particular Roman centurion soldier, his entire job was to lead the execution of people like all day long. I mean, your one job is to beat up, humiliate, cuss at, swear at, to make another human being feel so bad physically and emotionally, and then put him on a cross until the sun scorched the person and the birds came and plucked out their eyes and fed from their skin. How would it be if that would be your job? Well, that's the job of the person that we're going to discuss today. See, this particular dude oversaw the entire process. Every day of every month of every year of his life. Do you think after a while, if that was you, that your heart would be callous? Don't you think after a while, your heart would be hardened? I mean, where does your mind need to go each day on that job to escape the reality of what you do? I mean, after a while, nothing moves you, nothing jars you, nothing phases you. You're just numb. And you just go through the motions. Like it's like another human being slaughtered, another human being beaten, another human being crucified. Can you imagine the state of your psyche? Now to set this up, prior to what we're seeing at this point in the life of Jesus and the life of this man called the centurion, here's just a snapshot of what his job entailed. See, like in Mark, this is from the Bible, in the New Testament part of the Bible. It's in what we call the Gospels. It's Matthew, Mark, so it's the second book in to the New Testament. In Mark chapter 15, verse 16, it says this: "Then the soldiers took Jesus into the courtyard of the governor's headquarters called the Praetorium and called out the entire regiment." Now, did you see that word there? It said, "then the soldiers." So the question that comes into my mind is, what happens before the then? Well, the centurion oversaw what was called scourging. It was where one human being was beating up another human being with a multi-pronged leather whip. And it was a whip that had pieces of glass and stone and bone put into the leather strands on the end. And the criminal would have been beaten on their entire backside to the point where their flesh looked like what paper looks like when it goes through a shredder. It was sick. I mean, it was just sick. Can you imagine that being your job? Can you imagine what that would do to your heart, mind, and soul? What do you need to tell yourself, like, every day you show up at that job? And Mark 15, 17 just gives us a glimpse of the emotional toll of the mocking that took place just as a part of the job. Look at this, verse 17. It says they dressed him, by the way, that is Jesus, in a purple robe, and they wove thorn branches into a crown, and literally they put it, they literally would be like jammed it into his head. Then they saluted him and taunted him, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they struck him on the head with a reed stick, spit, and dropped to their knees in mock worship. Come on, can you imagine showing up to work each day and your job was to spit on another human being? How cold or callous does your heart have to be to do that job? And then you look at Mark 15, verse 20. It says, when they were finally tired of mocking him, they took off the purple robe and put his own clothes on him again. And I don't know if you understand that. Like, so they put this robe on him that's purple, right? And before they put his other clothes on him, they had to take off that robe. So literally all the blood had coagulated into the garment. And so then when they tore that garment off, can you imagine the agony? And then it says they led him away to be crucified or executed. Now, let's just do this, because some of you kind of knew the Bible, but for those of you who are looking with me at your Bible, Mark 15, let's go like to verse 33. And this man, Jesus, okay, the centurion, by the way, has supervised all this human atrocity. And this man, Jesus, has carried his cross through the streets of Jerusalem. And what we have going on here by verse 33 is Jesus has been nailed to the cross. And at this point, Jesus has already been up on the cross, when we get to verse 33, for 3 hours. And those whose job it was to put him on the cross at 9 a.m., so they did that. And he's already cried out at this point, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And it's at noon our time where we're going to pick up the story. And by the way, it's going to get dark in the middle of the day. And I just got to ask you, what does it take to do this job? Does anything get through to you? And by the way, Jesus was just one of many thousands of people who by this time in history were crucified, executed at the hands of the Romans. So this dude, the centurion, has seen it all. This executioner, are you tracking with me? So Mark 15, verse 33, here's what it says. At noon, darkness fell across the whole land until 3 o'clock. Now, let me just say this. Growing up as a child, I got to watch a few eclipses. But here's where things began to change when it came to this crucifixion. See, on this day, for this man, the job got different, because all of a sudden, when there was this darkness, just so we're clear here, this was a supernatural event. This was not an eclipse. And the way we know that this isn't an eclipse is because to see an eclipse during the day, it needs to be a new moon. And we know that this all happened at the Passover time in the calendar, and Passover only happens even to this day during a full moon. So something supernatural begins to happen, and it gets dark in the middle of the day for 3 hours. Okay, so let's go back and let's read some more. Mark 15, it says, at noon, darkness fell across the whole land until 3 o'clock. Then at 3 o'clock, Jesus cries out with a loud voice. I'm going to shout right now, right? I'm going to shout on your screen, or if you're watching, listening, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you abandoned me? In fact, in verse 35, it says, some of the bystanders misunderstood and thought he was calling for the prophet Elijah, because it sounds like Elijah, right? Eloi, right? And one of them, it says in the next verse, ran and filled a sponge with sour wine, holding it up to him on a reed stick so he could drink. And that guy said, wait, let's see whether Elijah comes down to take him down. They're mocking him right now. And then look at verse 37. Then Jesus uttered another loud cry. And I need to tell you something right now. The writers of the other books, okay, who tell the historical story of the death of Jesus, and the name of those books, by the way, are Matthew and Luke, they tell us that Jesus, like right here, like it's like he says the word tetelestai, or in our English it would be, it is finished. And then he says, into your hands I commit my spirit. But Mark simply says, get this, look at it there. Then Jesus uttered another loud cry, okay? And so you got to insert in there, the loud cry was, tetelestai, it is finished, and into my hands. And that's where you have Mark just being abbreviating, like he says, and breathe his last. And then it says these words, and the curtain in the sanctuary of the temple was torn in two. So right in that moment when he breathed his last, this temple in the curtain sanctuary was torn in two from the top all the way to the bottom. So right at that moment, supernatural occurrence number 2, the curtain of the temple. First is the darkness for 3 hours. Now, let me just say this. This kind of stuff didn't happen in the execution of anyone else. But on this day, well, this guy was on the job. In fact, let me give you a little background. For some of you who don't know much about the Bible. And by the way, if you're tuning in right now, you're listening in, I'm glad that you're with us right now. See, there's a book in the Old Testament portion of the Bible. Just so you know, the Old Testament has 39 books. It starts with the book of Genesis and ends with the book of Malachi. There's a book in between all those that's called 1 Kings. And in 1 Kings, it tells us in chapter 6, verse 2, that the temple is literally 30 cubits high. Now, I probably know you don't know your measurement in cubits, right? Well, that would be about 45 feet tall. And there was a Jewish historian whose name is Josephus that tells us that when Herod redid the temple, he increased the temple height to 45 cubits high, which would have been about 60 feet tall. So historians believe the curtain to be 60 feet tall. And for perspective, okay, if you've ever been on the Crossing Church campus, that is 2 times the height of the parking structure or the kids' building. Literally, the curtain in the temple was like 60 feet high. And if you've been on our campus, it's about 30 feet wide. So that's about the length, if you will, of the kids' building. And the thickness of the curtain was between about the length of your hand. So about between 6 and 9 inches. And it's all made out of silk. And by the way, it was so thick, you could throw a hatchet at it and it wouldn't dent. A bullet couldn't go through it. I mean, this material couldn't be torn with human hands. Very hard to tear. So imagine a curtain as high as double the parking structure or double the kids' building on the Crossing campus, as wide as the length of the kids' building, 6 to 9 inches thick. Who tore it? And by the way, it tore from the very top all the way to the bottom. Who tore it? God did. On this day of this man's job, that type of thing never happened with any other people who were executed or crucified. Mark 15, verse 39, it all leads up to this verse, so that when the Roman officer who stood facing him, who's him? That's Jesus, friends. When the Roman officer who stood facing him saw how Jesus, had died, he exclaimed, "This man truly was the Son of God." Now, let me give you a little context of the life of the centurion at the time of Jesus. His job would have been to be the leader or chief over 60 to 80 men. His job made him the commander or the leader in the Roman army. So 60, 80 men reported to him. And at the crucifixion, history seems to indicate that he would have had some 12 men who would have been under his charge. Death was something this man would have seen every day. Let me say that again. Death would have been something this man would have seen every day. In fact, not only is death something he had seen every day, but as I already said, because of his job, he would have been a part of whipping the criminals, nailing the nails, or at the very least, he would have been telling other people to do it. He was the chief executioner. He would have been very close, front and center to the execution process of many different people, hundreds of people, thousands of people by this time. He would have overseen it or participated in it day after day, after day after day. Can I just stop and ask, what must that do to your heart, your mind, your soul? How callous do you have to be to have a job like that? But you see, this particular day started out the same as all his days started. He woke up, his alarm went off, and it was his turn to go into the governor's palace or place, right? And the governor's name at the time was Pilate. And this political leader would literally give him the people he was going to execute on that particular day. But something was different on this day. Something was very different, because when he gets to the governor's place, on the list is a man that he had heard of, a religious leader. I mean, this man was in Jerusalem, and there were stories of this man named Jesus. And this religious person was healing so many people. In fact, at times, he was doing so many miraculous things, like he would make food out of nothing. And there were even stories among his coworkers that this Jesus had helped centurions in the past and even raised people from the dead. I mean, he healed people who were going to die. And now, this Jesus was on trial before the governor, and what he was accused of was claiming to be the Son of God. And the religious leaders had taken him to Pilate, a Roman political official, and said, he's claiming to be the king of the Jews. So Pilate tries him, finds him innocent, saying, why don't we release Jesus to you instead of Barabbas? Because we got to release somebody to you today, and Barabbas is a really, really bad guy. And they all say, no! We want you to execute Jesus. Release to us Barabbas. Crucify Jesus. And this centurion is on his job, and he's literally watching all this take place. And he's got to be thinking to himself, what's happening here? See, this is a way different process than what normally happens on each day of his life. And then, he's seen other people crucified or executed. And the centurion watches the governor literally wash his hands, basically saying to all the people, I don't believe this man is guilty, but hey, centurion, take him away. People want him crucified, kill him. And then the centurion did what was his job. He watched Jesus get beaten. But this man, Jesus, can I just say, he didn't respond like the other criminals that he had beat up before. They were executed. Jesus didn't fight back. Jesus didn't cuss back. Jesus didn't spit back. Jesus didn't return threats when threats were hurled against him. In fact, this day on the job, when they put this man on the cross, the first words that were told that Jesus says on the cross, what came out of his mouth were, Father, forgive them. That's Luke 23:34. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Can you imagine what it would have been like to be the centurion on the job that day? I mean, all this has got to be blowing his mental circuits. All this is chipping away at his heart, what he's seeing, what he's hearing, or maybe not hearing at some points in the process. And he's taking notice. He's thinking something's different about this guy, this Jesus. And then at noon, right in the middle of the day, it gets dark, like desert dark. Have you ever been out in the desert? Like when it's dark, and it's dark for like 3 hours? And then at 3 p.m. that day, Jesus cries out from the cross, it is finished. And so at that precise moment, as he's on the job, he hears Jesus yell out, it's finished. And we know from the book of Matthew, at that very moment, the ground begins to shake violently. And let me just say this right now. Stop right there. We know what it's like here in Southern California to experience an earthquake. Have you ever felt one? Initially, you're kind of unnerved, and if it goes longer, you get a little bit anxious, and if it goes really long, it's terrifying, right? And not only that, rocks and boulders start to split. Imagine being in Yosemite and having Half Dome literally splitting before your very eyes. People literally all around are staggering. Rocks all around are shattering. None of this has ever happened on the job before. He's doing what he had done every day on the job. He was just doing what his bosses were telling him to do. He's going through the motions. It's as if Jesus' death has shifted the entire cosmos. And Matthew tells us that the centurion and the men, like the other executioners, they were in awe in Matthew 27:54. Look what it says. It says, when the centurion and those who were with him, keeping watch over Jesus, saw the earthquake and what took place, they were filled with awe. And they said, truly, this was the Son of God. See, this day on the job was different. Something happened to this man. Something got through to this man. In fact, the writer, Luke, decides to point our attention specifically from like his position as the supervisor of the execution of Jesus. It says in Luke 23:47, when the Roman officer overseeing the execution saw what had happened, he worshiped God and said, surely this man was innocent. Now, let me ask you who are listening, watching, what will it take to break through to your heart when it comes to Jesus? You see, some of you are what I'd put in the category of religious kinds of people. You listen to messages and maybe you attend churches, but did you know the religious people of Jesus' day, they too were callous and hardened of heart? And see, just so we're clear today, Jesus is being crucified, executed, not because he taught moral things that people disagreed with. I mean, we live in a culture right now that likes Jesus. Our culture likes Jesus, but most in our world will say Jesus was a good teacher. The issue I have is most people today, due to their hearts being calloused and cold and hard, most people will literally back away from who Jesus claimed to be. Religious leaders at the time of Jesus, look at this with me in Mark 14. The religious leaders were trying to get Jesus in trouble. They put all these false witnesses together, and these false witnesses' testimonies didn't agree with one another. So even by their own law, they couldn't put Jesus to death because you got to have agreement of more than one witness in order to put someone to death. And that wasn't happening. So the high priest asked Jesus a question in Mark 14:61. Look at it. It says, then the high priest asked him, are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One? In other words, are you the Messiah? Are you the Son of God? Verse 62, Jesus answered with no sarcasm, no anger, simply stated, he says, I am. See, a famous author, some of you maybe have heard his name, C.S. Lewis, he wrote, you and I must decide, is Jesus a liar, a lunatic, or a Lord? We cannot say he was some great moral teacher because his teaching was essentially, I'm the Son of God. Either he was a liar, and by the way, a great moral teacher cannot be a liar, so we have to rule that out, or Jesus is a lunatic, and if you read about Jesus, he didn't act like a lunatic, because lunatics aren't the kind of people that serve other people, and that's what Jesus did. He served people. See, in your heart today, I'm just going to tell you right now before I go any further, you have to decide. Today, is Jesus a liar, is Jesus a lunatic, or is he Lord? And the religious leaders asked him, are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One? And Jesus simply stated, I am. And because of it, in verse 63, look at this. Then the high priest tore his clothing to show his horror and said, why do we need other witnesses? You have all heard his blasphemy. What is your verdict? Guilty, they all cried. He deserves to die. And the religious leaders were so callous and cold and hard-hearted, they put Jesus to death because he claimed to be the Son of God. Yet now, the person who's the most numb of all, mostly because of the kind of job he had, the first person to have their heart crack open, the first person to soften their stance is the man in charge of the execution. So I got to ask you again today, what will it take to break through to your heart when it comes to Jesus? Can I risk and suggest, let this story melt your heart. Let this story sink in. Let this story soften you. See, here's what I think. Some of you, you're thinking, I've been rebelling for so long, there's just no way that Jesus could ever forgive me for what I've done or am now doing. Well, you need to know the story of good news. It's right here for you to see. It's like right here for you to hear today. What will it take to break through your heart when it comes to Jesus? See, so the point that you would even get there to where you would believe that Jesus is the Son of God. Get this, will you? I don't care what you've done or what you're now doing. Even crucifiers, even executioners are extended grace when they confess Jesus. They too get total and complete forgiveness for their sin. This is a wonderful thing. It doesn't get any better. Jesus dies in front of this man supervising his death. And when Jesus breathes his last breath, Mark 15:39, the officer stood facing him, saw how he died, and he exclaimed, he said, "This man truly was the Son of God." What will it take to break through to your heart when it comes to Jesus? And let me just say this before I end. If the supernatural occurrences of earthquakes and darkness and split rocks won't do it for you, if the fact of the historical account of this man, Jesus, not fighting back, not cussing back, not spitting back, if that doesn't do it for you, look at this verse, John 19. So that is what the soldiers did. Now, like, what did the soldiers and the centurion do? All those things we talked up to this point, they did their job. The execution and everything leading up to the execution. And then look at John 19, verse 25. It says, standing near the cross, were Jesus' mother and his mother's sister Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother standing there, stop right there, like he's on the cross. When he saw his mother standing there beside the disciple he loved, he said to her, "Dear woman, here is your son." And he said to this disciple, "Here is your mother." And from then on, this disciple took her into his home. Now think about that. Think about what the centurion just witnessed while he was on the job. Can you imagine the colliding of the audible and the visual things that the centurion saw and heard on this day on the job? Jesus, his face is beaten beyond recognition. But that was part of the job, right? The crown of thorns is literally beaten into his head, and there was some cranial ooze that was coming out. Again, it's part of the job, right? Jesus' eyes puffy, blood pouring out of his face as they had plucked out his beard. Again, part of the job. His lips are inflamed as they punched him again and again, but it's all part of the job. And out of the blood and the saliva and the cranial ooze, the guy on the cross is saying these loving, tender things. This wasn't a normal day on the job. He hadn't seen anything like this before. He's saying, "Mom, I'm going to take care of you. John, take care of Mom." Come on, friends. Does that not blow your mind? Does that not open your heart? It opened up the mind and the heart of this battle-hardened, career-callous centurion on that day. And he said, truly, this guy is the real deal. He is who he said he was. Okay, I got to ask you one last time. What will it take to break through to your heart when it comes to Jesus? Will you open your heart to Jesus today? I'm going to give you an opportunity right now, and I want you to pray with me. I want you to let God know that you've done wrong. I want you to let him know that when you've done wrong, just tell him you've done wrong. And like the centurion, he deserved punishment for that, but just tell him that. And then thank Jesus for taking the punishment you deserve. I want to invite you to use the words of the centurion today. So let's just pray right now. Let's just pray. All of you are putting your faith in Jesus. Just pray with me right now. Just say, Jesus, I want to declare to you today that I am like the centurion. I have done wrong, and I deserve punishment. And I thank you, Jesus, for taking my punishment on you. And today, I believe that you, Jesus, are the Son of God. And let me just say this right now. If you just prayed that very simple prayer, I want you right now, wherever you're listening, I want you right now just to say it out loud. Truly, this man is the Son of God. If that's you and you're willing to say, I believe, then say it right now. Say it out loud. Truly, this man is the Son of God. I want you to say it one more time. Say it with me. If you just prayed that, say that. Truly, this man is the Son of God. See, my hope is that as a result of the centurion's heart being softened, your heart has been softened as well.
All things have passed away. Your love has stayed the same. Your constant grace remains the cornerstone. And things that we thought breathing in life again, and you cause your sun to shine on darkest nights. For all that you've done, we will pour out our love. This will be our anthem song. Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore. The hopeless I found there. The orphans now have a home, and all that was lost has found its place in you. And you lift our weary head, and you make us strong instead. And you took these rags and made us beautiful. For all that you've done, we will pour out our love. This will be our anthem song. And Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore. And Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore. Our hearts adore you. Our hearts adore. In our affection, our devotion poured out on the feet of Jesus. In our affection, our devotion poured out on the feet of Jesus. In our affection, our devotion poured out on the feet of Jesus. In our affection, our devotion poured out on the feet of Jesus. We love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore.
Thank you so much for being here. The Crossing is a place for you to explore faith and experience the life-changing ways of Jesus. We are getting closer to the biggest celebration of the year for people who follow Jesus, Easter. It's almost here. We're going to have special services for both Good Friday and for Easter. The Good Friday service will be online at 12 p.m. on Friday, April 15th. It's going to be a heartfelt and a unique experience. And for those of you that are in the area, we will have an on-campus service for Good Friday at 12 and 7 p.m. on that Friday. And then there's Easter. Easter is a day of hope, joy, and community. Our service for Easter will be online on Saturday, April 16th at 5:30 p.m. And our on-campus Easter services are Sunday, April 17th. We have 8:30, 10, and 11:30 in the morning. Lots of options for you to come and invite friends and family. I personally love how every year my parents, they come with me to the Crossing so that we can experience celebrating the resurrection together. You can go to thecrossing.com/Easter for all the information about Good Friday and Easter. Thank you to all of you who support the Crossing. If you've been around here for a while, you know that the Crossing is focused on serving the community and reaching people. Every single dollar you give is poured into serving the community and reaching people. And I hope that when you hear that, it activates something in your heart. So I want to invite you, jump into volunteering and jump into giving to the Crossing. I promise you, it makes all the difference. If you want to give to the Crossing, you can go to thecrossing.com/give. There you'll be prompted to set up a one-time or recurring gift. Both of them, they're easy, safe, and they will make an impact. Thank you so much for supporting this place. Also, we've made something especially for you, our online Crossing family. It's a resource about the 4 biblical truths that if you know nothing about Jesus, God, or the Bible, these 4 truths serve as a foundation for a life of faith. You can scan the QR code or use the link in the description below to get your free resource. And make sure you connect with our community online. We have an active Facebook group where you can make friends, share what you've learned, and ask questions. The link is in the description below. So thanks for being here. Don't let your faith exploration stop here. Take a next step, whether it's getting the resource, coming to Easter services, or making a donation. Take a step today. We will see you soon. Goodbye.